Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. Thank you for holding this hearing. When it comes to the Pacific Northwest, I guarantee you with tsunamis and earthquakes and volcanoes, flooding, worried about lahars, name it, we pay a lot of attention to disaster issues. And I'm reminded, having been on the committee for some time, our former colleague, Senators Stevens and Inouye, spent a lot of time on the development of what is the buoy system, which is our earliest detection on the waves so that we can have this information. And now NOAA is working very diligently on interpretation of that activity so that we can get the information to handheld devices. So it is, I think we need to be thankful that we've made the investment in technology. I think the question becomes who in the federal government owns the protocols for making sure that the coordination happens at the state and local level if so many of the partners in the development of that communication or the communication itself, for example, the Weather Service, who I know isn't with us this morning, how do we make sure that that information is there? So for us out on the Long Beach Peninsula, this issue is a very big issue. We have established warning sirens and warning information, but and I think the scientists at NOAA would tell us this is what we should be developing, but now we have a very rural, isolated community trying to figure out how to deal with a tsunami. Many people may remember this story that the New Yorker wrote a few years back, the big one. I never heard from so many of my friends around the United States when that article appeared because they all woke up and said, this is really what's going to happen. So we train constantly on this as a coordinated effort between Homeland Security, our National Guard, our local responders. But who owns, at the federal level, thinking through what this communication protocol should actually look like and how we establish safeguards within the protocol so that these kinds of mistakes or information gaps are avoided in the future? Because we want to continue with the information, that's for sure. So does anybody have a thought on that? Ms. Flowers, Mr.
In terms of the communication service provider side, certainly the FCC works with the service providers. We have rules that apply in terms of how they're supposed to react in terms of receiving and transmitting the alerts. On the alert origination side, on the FEMA side, I'd have to refer more to them. I will say that just in terms of general coordination, the FCC has at times coordinated, well, not just at times, but regularly coordinates with FEMA in terms of things such as testing or some of the dealing with some of the issues that go to our rulemakings. To give you an example, with respect to the EAS, there's a lot of states particularly on the western side of the country, who do tsunami and earthquake tests, and they want to use the live code EAS, which under our rules you can't use unless it's an actual emergency. We have, working with broadcasters and other EAS participants, waived our rules to allow the broadcasters, the cable operators, to transmit that live code test as part of the broader tsunami exercise that FEMA may be doing with a state or local government.
This isn't, I'm not trying to stump the panel. It's more that I think we have a gap here. And I know in our state, because the National Guard and the tech sector are so strong, they've established what they call hygiene issues for cybersecurity. Here are the 10 things that you should follow for good cybersecurity hygiene. Somewhere, it seems to me that we need this protocol list of here's what emergency response should look like, and here are the safeguards that should be in place. Whether you're talking about a county or a state or you know, the federal system, because we're going to keep marching ahead. We need this, we need the information. We desperately want this kind of, when it's an earthquake, you only have, you know, you might only have minutes to respond. And because as I said, this article about the big one in the Northwest, we want to see this data and information. But we also want to make sure that, like the things that happened in Hawaii, also have new safeguards for false alarms. And I remember Senator Inouye talking about a previous moment in Hawaii's history prior to all this technology where they had, I think it went on for hours, he said, they thought a tsunami wave was going to hit, and so this went on for hours and hours. And that's why we developed the buoy system, so that the buoy system, so the buoy system did work the other night in Kodiak, and it gave people, even though that it went off, it gave people time to then understand from the science level that the wave was not going to be that great. So we want the technology, but we need some protocols as to how it's used and how to make sure that there are some safeguards there for the public. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.